Well, bigger is always better, seems to be the case for the U.S. military. Back in the 1930s, the U.S. constructed a 785-foot-long helium balloon airship that was meant to rival Germany's air fleet. It was the biggest airship ever to be built in America up to that point. Although it did not end up crashing, no one really knows why, it did end up crashing. Nobody really knows why or how. Moving along now, the B fleet is another testament to the bigger is better mentality. The B-17 bomber was known as the Flying Fortress because it could supposedly survive massive damage and still land safely. Its cousin, the B-29 bomber, upped the ante. It was used in World War II and the Korean War, and the famous B-52 Stratofortress bomber made the U.S. all the more powerful with its long-range jet-powered bomber. But it doesn't stop there. Take a look at what they recently launched. It's a massive drone, the biggest in existence. You are looking at the Phantom Eye, launching from NASA's Research Center last week. The military is hoping that this mega drone will be able to soar at 65,000 feet for 96 hours at a time. That's 4 days. The enormity of this drone, made by Boeing, would allow 450 pounds of sensors, cameras, and all kinds of nifty spying devices on board. Now, that's a far cry from what the drone actually did during the test flight. It was only airborne for about a half hour, but it's the first step for the military, sending the biggest spy machine to hover in our skies, one that can keep a close eye on cities for days at a time. So what did this mean for your privacy? To have one of these Uber drones loitering above? To discuss this, I'm joined now by John Glasser, assistant editor for antiwar.com. Welcome, John. So it looks like bigger is always better in the military.
Well, yeah, this actually gets to the spirit of what the military-industrial complex and imperial grand strategy for the United States has been for decades. Primary among those was to prevent any other peer competitor in the world from gaining their own dominance or independence from a American-dominated system. And that plays out in all kinds of ways. I mean, take defense budgets. The Obama administration and both parties in Congress have been lying through their teeth for years now about the doom that our national security would face if we decreased the rate of growth in the projected defense spending. That's a key phrase because, of course, they talk about, cuts to defense, taking an axe to defense budgets, but all that's being talked about is decreasing the rate of growth in projected defense spending. And now when you think about this drone war, what we're facing now is that drones have become a tool for war, but the war makers don't need to declare war. And so, again, this is about total dominance. Nobody can face against us. And that's the nature of what it's like to be in Washington and be a part of the war party.
Now, John, we've reported a lot on drones and blimp drones, but what exactly is this new mega drone capable of?
Well, this mega drone, which is far bigger than the type of drones that are now flying over Pakistan or Somalia or in the war zones, former war zone in Iraq and Afghanistan, it's far bigger. It can fly far higher at 65,000 feet. The other ones were only a few thousand. And it can stay in the air without being refueled for up to 4 days. So what this means is an expanded power to spy on and perhaps drop bombs on people below.
And the fact that these drones, they are unmanned, they can hover in the air for days at a time. Why should people be concerned about that? And is there a possibility that this can be used domestically to monitor U.S. cities?
Well, people should be concerned about it because drones in general are already representing a significant expansion of power that is unchecked, government power that is unchecked, goes with unaccountability, no transparency, it's secret, we're not allowed to know about it, but they have incredible power behind them. Essentially, like I said, the power to declare war without actually declaring it. The reason Americans should be concerned about it is that police departments are now getting more in touch with the drone technology. and that's happening all throughout the country. The FAA has started to lease licenses for drone use, and it'll get to surveillance and perhaps weaponized drones in some amount of time.
All right, and I do want to get into drones, and the use of drones by the U.S. military has been controversial lately, especially the way they've been used in Pakistan, angering the people of countries abroad. A U.S. official says a drone strike in Pakistan's northwest tribal region has killed al-Qaeda's second in command. What does this say about our rocky relationship with Pakistan, as well as President Obama's drone campaign?
Well, Pakistan has repeatedly asked us to stop bombing their country. They talk about their own sovereignty, and we have not declared war on them, and it's a non-war zone technically, and they've repeatedly demanded that we stop. Pakistan, after this latest set of drone bombings in the tribal regions, Pakistan today summoned the U.S. envoy to the foreign ministry to lodge a formal protest with him over the series of drone strikes that Pakistan repeatedly has asked to be ended.
You know, as you had mentioned earlier, John, defense cuts are supposed to be put in place in order to adhere to a tighter budget. But how can defense justify splurging on this big fancy drone, and does the U.S. really need it?
No, the U.S. doesn't really need it. You could cut the defense budget in half, and still the United States would outspend most of the world, probably all of the world, considering the vast amount of military bases we have across the world and all of the advanced military technology that we have, and outspend the rest of the world. We don't need this stuff. It's dangerous, and it represents serious legal problems when the administration starts to use them with no accountability.
And John, to kind of put it from the military's perspective, can you blame them for wanting to have the biggest and the best and wanting to be the most well-equipped?
Well, yes, I can. This is part of the mentality behind a foreign policy that is inherently expansive and inherently seeks to dominate the entire world and doesn't take into account stuff like civilian casualties in this drone war. So yes, I can blame them. They should be held accountable for this kind of reckless behavior.
All right, John, thank you very much for coming on the show. That was John Glazer, assistant editor for antiwar.com.